Welcome to the Bethel, Hartford, and Lebanon Juneteenth Festival. I am your host for today, Senator Joe Major. And I want to thank you for being here today to honor Juneteenth, a day of remembrance, resilience, and liberation. On June 19th, in 1865, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, the last enslaved Black Americans in Galveston, Texas, were finally told they were free. That delay, those long stolen years, remind us of why truth in history matters. It reminds us that freedom delayed is freedom denied. It reminds us that telling our history, all of our history, is not just important, but essential to justice. Today, as we gather here in Vermont, a state often seen far from the front lines of America's civil rights struggles, we must be clear. Black history is not something that happened somewhere else. Black history is Vermont's history. From Lucy Terry Prince, the first known African-American poet who lived right here in Vermont, to Alexander Twilight, the first Black American to earn a college degree and serve in a state legislature right here in Vermont, and of course, General O.O. Howard, who was born and buried here and founded the Mecca of Black institution, my alma mater, Howard University. Vermont has known its own chapters of courage, contribution, and community building by Black Vermonters. Their stories are not just side notes. They are central to the understanding the full picture of who we are and who we must become. But there are forces today, some subtle, others blatant, that seek to bury and erase this history. They want our schools to teach versions of the past that is sanitized and safe, not just hard and honest. They say it's too political, too divisive to talk about slavery, systemic racism, and the long fight of civil rights. But here's the truth. Hiding this history doesn't protect our children. It leaves them unprepared. It denies them the tools to understand the world around them and their place in it. It denies them empathy, awareness, and responsibility. We must push back, because when we are silent, the truth, we abandon justice. When we erase the past, we cripple the future. Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom, but also a call to action. It reminds us that liberation is not a moment, but a movement. And that movement requires us to confront painful truths, to uplift overlooked voices, and to defend integrity of our shared history. So today, let us honor Juneteenth, not just with celebration, but with a commitment. Let's commit to teaching the full history, the full story, embracing uncomfortable truths, and recognizing that Black history is American history, and that it belongs in every classroom, in every town, and in every heart in this country, and right here in Vermont. I would like to bring to the stage the Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley. He ministers the North Universal Chapel Society in Woodstock. Reverend Dunkley received his undergraduate degree from Tufts University, go Jumbos, and his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. Among other things, he studied traditional drumming in Ghana and the Republic of Zaire, the choral traditions of Senegal, and the African-American blues and jazz traditions throughout Americas. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Leon Dunkley.
You're the good doctor.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Probably if it's too tough to tell our children, who are the dearest things we know, it's probably a good sign that we shouldn't have done it. Always remember. How's that? Joe Major mentioned that there were things that we're not willing to teach in class right now, or things that people are trying to prevent us from teaching in the classroom. But I was saying, if it's something that makes us so uncomfortable that we aren't able to tell our children, it's probably a good marker that we shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Always remember that you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Good afternoon. My name is Leon Dunkley. I minister to North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel in Woodstock, Vermont. I would like to extend my deep thanks to Senator Major and to the organizers of this event, as well as to all of you. Thank you for being here for this wonderful celebration of Juneteenth, our federal holiday. I would like to share a thought with you, if I may. I want to share the longing of my heart. My hope is that it strengthens us so that we can meet the challenge of our time with courage and with compassion. Here is my heart. Bernice Johnson Regan remembered something for us. She gave us something. She left something with us, I think, that set us free. She left us a song that was, it was called "Oh Run, Mourner Run." I'm just going to sing a part of it for you. She sang, "Oh, run, run, mourner, run, bright angels above. Oh, run, run, mourner, run, bright angels above." And the song had just one verse, which is, "If I had two wings, I would fly away to the kingdom." The song is not a long poem, but it takes a long time to sing it. It takes us a long time to work through the emotions of it. We can recite it in seconds, but it takes a good long time to sing, especially when you are as gifted as Bernice Regan Johnson. She was born in the fall of 1942. She died in the summer of last year at 81 years of age. She was the founder of a well-known singing group called Sweet Honey in the Rock. The group is still alive and active today. Powerful, insightful, open-hearted women of color who have committed themselves to the singing of songs that set us free from slavery. They do not sing the songs that freed us from the slavery of the past. They sing the songs that free us from slavery in every sense and in every tense, because the process of becoming free is not an easy process. Healing takes time. Wisdom takes time. Freedom, healing, wisdom, these are ongoing processes. They take place over time. This is what we need to teach our children, and Sweet Honey in the Rock provides the soundtrack. Sweet Honey in the Rock is a group that sings freedom songs, songs that require access to the record of history, songs that require the framework of culture, songs that engender the character of strength, and songs that impeach a context of absurdity that allowed us to believe that one human being could own another. History, culture, strength over absurdity were the requirements of freedom on June 19th in 1865, 160 years ago. We still need these things today in order to truly be free. Without them, we are in trouble. This is inescapable. And all slavery, of course, requires an escape. If slavery offers a history, if it offers a gift to history, if it leaves a legacy that a healthy soul can value, it can only be this: the requirement of escape. We sing, "Oh freedom, Oh, freedom over me. Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord to be free. We still sing these songs, not to entertain or to perform, not to amuse or to distract. We sing these songs to protect ourselves and protect one another from the dangers of voicelessness. We will not be voiceless. Freedom is never voiceless. Even when she sleeps, she sings. Freedom sings to defend what is beautiful in us. We sing to ourselves and to one another in order to defend the beautiful. We gather here today to celebrate Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a federal holiday which marks the end of slavery in the United States. Juneteenth commemoration dates back to the last days of the Civil War when Union soldiers landed in Galveston, Texas. They arrived there on June 19th in 1865. Union soldiers arrived to make real the news that President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years earlier. They arrived to make real the news that General Lee had surrendered to Grant 2 months earlier. They arrived to make real the news that the Civil War had ended and that the days of slavery, the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the decades, the centuries of American slavery had finally and at long last come to an end. It is a sweet, bitter thing that slavery was ended by President Lincoln nearly 1,000 days before the black folk of Galveston knew that they were free. They were free, but they didn't know it. They could reach for the stars, but they did not know that they could reach for the stars. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, the passion to reach for the stars and to change the world. They say that Harriet Tubman said that. She said these words, and I think that they're right. Harriet Tubman said a lot of powerful things. She said, there was one of two things that I had a right to, that was liberty or death. If I could only have one, I would take the other, for no man shall enslave me or take me alive. Tubman said, I never run my train off the track, and I never lose a passenger. Apparently, Tubman did not say something that I thought she did, because of her key role in the Underground Railroad, that secret network of hiding places and safe houses along the pathway to freedom in the North, before and during the Civil War. Because of her key role, she was thought to have said, I freed thousands of slaves, and I would have freed more if they knew that they were slaves. If they knew. It's a catchy quote, for sure, but it's unclear if she actually said it, because it's next to impossible to misunderstand one's enslavement. It's next to impossible to think that one could be enslaved and somehow not know about it. No one who is currently detained in Guantanamo or in St. Albans, in El Salvador or in Louisiana, or in Newark, New Jersey these days, actually believes that they are free. It's a catchy quote because it turns a key in us. It turns a key in us that is real, as real for us today as it was in 1865. Something is still locked up inside of us, still bound, still tied, still chained, still in need of an escape. It's still hard for us sometimes to see ourselves in one another. It's so much easier than it was, but it's still challenging. We still put ourselves and one another in little cages, in little racial cages, in little political cages, in cages of so many kinds, when kindness itself might be the thing that sets us free. Sonia Sotomayor and Amy Coney Barrett are two very different women. One is a woman of color, the other is white. One is from the Bronx and the other is from New Orleans. One is more liberal and the other is more conservative, yet they are both justices in the Supreme Court of the United States. Neither woman is a slave to her identity. Both are free in spite of and because of their respective differences, and together they say our shared belief in community is fundamental. So how do we find common ground in society? We have to engage with people outside of our usual circles. We start with wisdom and understanding. These things make us free, free enough to disagree more kindly, and as they say, to disagree better. Always remember that you have within you the strength to reach for the stars, to change the world. Thank you for helping to defend the beautiful. Have a beautiful day.
Karen Leo Hill is a member of the Executive Council of New Hampshire. She earned her bachelor's degree from Dartmouth, majoring in government and minoring in education. In 2005, she was elected to serve on the Lebanon City Council, and she was mayor of Lebanon from 2008 to 2009. And now she also is the treasurer of Grafton County. Karen Hill.
Thank you so much, Senator. I do love that. Last time we were here, I think that was before your election and before my election to the Executive Council. It is so good to be with all of you today and to join together with the city of Lebanon, the town of Hartford, and now the town of Bethel's Juneteenth celebration. I'm Karen Leo Hill, and as the Senator mentioned, I have been in public service for a long time. One of the things I'm most proud of during my 20 years on the Lebanon City Council was helping to found Lebanon's DEI Commission and helping to start the celebration, the tradition of celebrating Juneteenth in the city of Lebanon. And I am so glad that we are now many years into this joint celebration together. And I hope that it will be a tradition that continues for decades and decades to come. There is something that bothers me about Juneteenth. When you look up what is the history of Juneteenth on the internet, a lot of the times you will see that it's described as when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation finally reached the people in Texas, as if in the 1800s this was just natural, that it would take 2 years for the word to come that the President of the United States had written an edict, and it just took 2 years because they didn't have cell phones. The history is much more grim. The Civil War started in 1861. The President signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And it wasn't that word took so long to get to Texas. It was that the Civil War had to continue, and the Union soldiers had to go town by town, state by state, freeing the people who were still being enslaved in direct rebellion against the president's orders. This was not a mistake. This was not some accident. Oops, I didn't get the memo. This was racism. This was oppression. And it took not just the pen, but it also took the deeds. It took the actions. It took blood spilled by people who were willing to put their lives on the line to set free the people who should have been free for many years. And so when I look up this history, or when I hear people talk about Juneteenth in this kind of whitewashed way, I think it's important for all of us to make sure we set the record straight. No, this was not an accident. No, this was not how long it took the word to get to Texas. This was people, enslavers in Texas, who refused to comply with the president's orders, and who would only comply when they were forced by the Union soldiers. We need to tell the truth about history. The struggle against oppression continues, And we know that it is not enough to simply have our rights enshrined in the Constitution. We need to have people who are willing to fight and to match the words to the deeds, to take action, and not just to assume that someone else is going to take care of it. I think of this every day as an elected official now at the state level. I'm the only Democrat in the executive branch in New Hampshire. It is a lonely place in Concord these days for people who believe, for people who are willing to talk about DEI, for people who are willing to fight against oppression. And it gives me great joy to be not in Concord today, but to be here in Hartford with all of you, with many people I represent and with many people with whom I am friends. And to know that I am not alone. Even though I am the only Democrat in the executive branch in New Hampshire, I know that I am not alone because we are all together. And as we continue this fight that was fought by people in the 1800s, the work is still before us, and the work is still just as important. I am committed to continuing this work in Concord and wherever I go, and I appreciate that we have such a great group here together today to celebrate and to mark this occasion. Thank you very much.
I call Emily Karras Duncan a legacy legislator here in Vermont. She is currently a state representative for Windham County. She represents the 6th District of Windham. She was raised in Rutland. Emily's father, Bill, was a business person and former Vermont state senator. So just to give you a little context around that, I was the 4th African-American named to the Senate in the history of Vermont. So Vermont's been in existence since 1791, for God's sakes. Emily's father was one of the 4. And not only that, Emily's mom was a representative at Montpelier. So Emily is passionate about her community. She works as an artist and a business owner and also a housing advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Karras Duncan.
Thank you all so much. It's such an honor to be here. I do have to make a couple of corrections, and Joe, this is not your fault, but I have to explain some things about myself. So, my name is Emily Karras Duncan. I am a representative from Windham County. I represent, oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Karras Duncan. I'm a state representative from Windham County. I represent Wilmington, Whitingham, and Halifax. I represent a very rural corner of our state. Well, it's not really a corner, it's actually dead in the middle of our state. And before I go on, I have to clarify a couple of things. So I am a 5th generation Vermonter. I'm a 5th generation, by the way, of adoption. I was raised, thank you. So I was raised in Rutland. I am a kid that went to Rutland Public Schools up through 8th grade, and then I went and flew the coop and went to Pennsylvania. I have traveled quite a bit, I've seen a lot of the world, and I decided to come home because I missed Vermont. And when I came home, I found this, I'm gonna cry. I apologize. But I found this beautiful community of Black folks that had not existed in my youth. I know we were always here, but we were not always together. So being able to come to a celebration of Juneteenth in Hartford, in Vermont, is a true blessing, and it makes my heart sing. So I came to talk to you all about freedom. Oh, all right. So I came to talk to you all a little bit about freedom, and I also, before I go on, I want to thank Joe so much for your friendship, for your mentorship, and for being in the State House and making it not so lonely. So we gather to celebrate Juneteenth. We are celebrating the generations of people that fought and achieved freedom. We are celebrating the overcoming, the triumph, the perseverance and resilience. We celebrate the fact that within 10 years of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, communities of formerly enslaved people had set up hundreds of schools and businesses. They were elected to public office, and they drove political, economic, educational, and cultural change that empowered Reconstruction. All of this in spite of leaving slavery with little to nothing. No 40 acres, no mule. This holiday, coupled with the 4th of July, is a reassertion of our commitment to freedom. The capital F freedom that our collective mission statement of this country. Here in Vermont, we know that freedom is an act of responsibility and service to ourselves and to others. For many of us that have been in the daily fight for equity, for justice, for generations, understand what burnout is. Burnout is a clear and present danger at all times. And I understand the impulse to rest. I understand the importance to rest. We need rest. We need restoration to continue the work in long term. But it's important to plan, it's important to act, and it's important to react when necessary. Our freedom is yet again under attack. At this moment, we are witnessing an unprecedented use of military force on the streets of LA. We have people being detained in St. Albans in Vermont. Let us not forget that we are a border state. The goal is fear, the goal is cruelty, the goal is silence, and the goal is fealty to a movement that would have us go back on the trodden path of racism and inequity that we've already been down. The movement will steal us away from our loved ones in our communities. The movement would have us close our eyes to history. But here in Vermont, we're continuing to build a state where we all can experience freedom to breathe and to live well. We will not be silent, because when it comes to freedom in Vermont, we don't play. And in the immortal words of the architect, Bertner Woodson Tandy, we're gonna fight until hell freezes over, and then we're gonna fight on the ice.
I thought it was important to have some of our youth talk to us. So Liam Mangieri is a recent Hartford grad and is going to Ithaca College. He'll be studying biology and social justice. Liam Mangieri.
Standing in front of you, I recognize and acknowledge my white privilege that has been derived from the suffering of others, especially Black people. I also stand in front of you as a queer person and acknowledge and recognize that Juneteenth symbolizes a moment of liberation that set the stage for the fight for the legal and moral rights of women, people with disabilities, and queer people. Juneteenth is not only a federal holiday or a piece of Black history, but a building block for every American's freedom. Right now, in 2025, 160 years after the message of the freedoms of slaves was received in Galveston, Texas, we are still building. Even though these blocks keep getting knocked down, we must continue to come back with just as much grit, if not come back more persistent than before. We must keep building while breaking down systems of oppression. The importance of working together has been proven throughout history to get our message across. We saw this just last weekend when 4,000 of our Upper Valley neighbors protested right over on that bridge, and in so many more across the country. As civil rights activists have taught us, it is not just the fight and the message, but the planning and the action that must happen to enact change. This is especially important in the time we are currently in, as DEI is being taken away, along with our neighbors, by people in black masks, and the government is trying to erase people who are trans. It is important to learn from our history, how our predecessors fought for freedom and how the government and others tried to suppress them. It is vital we keep fighting as a community for not only our rights, but the rights of everyone. Because in the end, like the poet Maya Angelou said, the truth is, no one of us can be free until everyone is free. Thank you.
Senator Sanders is a freedom fighter for us in Vermont. And he took the time to write us a letter, and I will have Select Board Member Miranda Dupree read that letter for you.
Hi, everybody. Please pretend that I am speaking in Bernie Sanders' voice because I think that is exactly how he writes. So imagine that. Dear friends, thank you for coming together in celebration of Juneteenth. Celebrating the day emancipation reached every corner of our country, it reminds us of the progress that has been made and the work we continue together. For centuries, America's economic rise relied on treating millions of Black people as literal property. We have still not come to terms with the horrors of legalized slavery and its continued impacts on our society. Sadly, we continue to witness the pervasive effects of racial injustice that have taken place for generations. We are talking about systemic racism that impacts every aspect of Black lives. Let me be absolutely clear. Racism in all its forms should have no place in the United States or anywhere for that matter. We can and must demand for more from our government. Today, during this Juneteenth celebration, we remember the lasting legacy of slavery. We recommit to creating a future where Black Americans live free from oppression and to rooting out systemic racism wherever it exists. That is not the work of a single day, but every day until it's a reality. Thank you all for your continued advocacy, and please know that Bernie Sanders will continue working to build a nation based on justice for all.
Ade Doyen Tariba is an assistant professor of modern contemporary architecture and urbanism at Dartmouth College. He specializes in modern and contemporary architecture, especially of West Africa diasporas. His books include Architecture in the Interwar World, Style, Race, and Architecture of a Mosque of the White, Black, and Logos Colony of 1894. Just a little heavy reading for you. And African civilizers, Western savages, and re-enchanting Enlightenment ideas of modern West Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Tariba.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. What I am going to offer, I'm going to offer questions, and I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to be discussing a particular picture that was taken in 1888. 1888. Location is southwest Nigeria. Of course, it wasn't southwest Nigeria at that time. It was the Lagos colony, a British colony in what is now southwest Nigeria. What was in the picture? The picture depicted in the foreground about 4 or 5 men of African descent. One of them wore a top hat and a jacket and trousers. The other men were wearing attire you would associate with the French King Louis XVI. 1888, so their attire was out of date, so to say. But what these 5 men in the foreground, there were people in the background, had in common, they were commemorating the abolition of slavery in Brazil. Brazil was the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery around 1888, 1889, after the Emancipation Proclamation in this country. They were people, they were migrants, they were former slaves who left Brazil and settled in the Lagos colony, that is southwest Nigeria. Black and white picture, as you would expect. And so here's the first question. Why were these former slaves dressed as Europeans, acting in a play called The Mysterious Ring? That was the name of the play, The Mysterious Ring. Why were they acting in a play to commemorate freedom, to commemorate abolition? And so again, I'm offering a question. I don't have any answers, and I find that picture incredibly fascinating. As an historian, historians, I'm sure some of you are historians here, one does research into history, coming out with more questions than answers. But again, why were these people of African descent, why were they dressed the way they were dressing? Why did they commemorate abolition in faraway Brazil? They were in Lagos, Nigeria, so across the Atlantic Ocean. Why were they commemorating abolition with the attire they were wearing? More than likely, The Mysterious Ring was a European play. These were people who spoke Portuguese because they learned Portuguese as slaves in Brazil. I offer this to you, again, a puzzle, a visual puzzle, a question, to talk about the kinship of Juneteenth with other places around the world that were commemorating freedom and commemorating the abolition of slavery. There was a talk at Dartmouth about 2 or 3 days ago by the actor Hartford, and he made the profound point that to think about Juneteenth, one has to think about abolition in other places as well. So there's a way in which Juneteenth is an American holiday, but it has spiritual kinship with other movements of abolition in other places. But back to this puzzle, and back to this, the visual conundrum encoded in that picture. You have to understand, between the years 1830 and the year 1900, more than 9,000 former slaves of African descent left the shores of Brazil and they moved to southwest Nigeria, where that play was taking place. They spoke Portuguese. They were connoisseurs of Western culture. It reminds me of the quote from Ralph Ellison, obviously the author of The Invisible Man, where he talks about how, and I'm quoting him, the Negro is a developed form of Western man. And I found that a very, very interesting, provocative quote. And I think what he meant by that was the way that diasporic people were just a mixture of different things. Connoisseurs of Western culture, connoisseurs of African traditions, and I think encoded in that picture, a picture of people of African descent, former slaves, celebrating freedom by invoking a European play. Again, a lot of contradictions here. And historians are not supposed to shy away from contradictions. And so I just offer this, that as we teach all of our history, we have to really dig into things like that. As Juneteenth continues to grow in strength and strength, we have to plow those complexities. We have to plow those seeming contradictions. Just to bring up Ralph Ellison again, so the Nigerian author Chinua Achebe wrote the very famous novel Things Fall Apart. He met Ralph Ellison in his office in the 60s. And Ralph Ellison was at pains to tell Achebe that Ralph Ellison, was as much formed by Beethoven as he was by the blues, an African-American vernacular. He was a complex individual. Juneteenth, I would argue, is complex. It is very complex in its history, and as this historical movement and this holiday grows from strength to strength, it's incumbent upon somebody like me, as an historian of architecture who deals with the African diaspora, to plow those depths, to plow the depths of the complexity, of the creativity of people of African descent. And so, in a nutshell, what I am trying to say is that as Juneteenth grows from strength to strength, let us look at the ways, the complex ways that people of African descent in this country really created forms of art that drew from many rivers. And that is part of the heritage and I think the legacy of Juneteenth. So again, I have questions, a visual puzzle, more than answers. But I think if I want to leave you with something, it's just to call it, Juneteenth represents the complexity, the creative potential of people of African descent, and that should be celebrated. Thank you very much.
The good professor mentioned Ralph Ellison and his famous novel, The Invisible Man. And we talked earlier about history in Vermont. And in actuality, Ralph Ellison wrote The Invisible Man right here in Vermont. Our history, Black history, is Vermont's history. Adrian Lane is a Hartford graduate, and he is going to attend Southern Maine University. He just graduated yesterday, so you can give him a applause. He will be studying biology.
Yes, Mr. Adrian.
Hi everyone, this is my first ever speech, so. Hi, can you hear me all now? Alright, cool. So this is my first ever speech, so go a little easy on me. But yeah, I guess I'll just get into it. What is a great person? George Washington was called great. He owned over 300 slaves and helped lead the colonization of Native Americans, but he was called great. Franklin D. Roosevelt was called great. He signed the executive order to put thousands of Japanese Americans to internment camps, and led the informal raids of over 1.8, informal raids and deportations of over 1.8 million Mexicans. But he was called great. Julius Caesar was called great. He led the ethnic cleansing of over millions of people throughout his time as a leader, as a general, and captured slaves all throughout Europe and North Africa. But he was called great. About a week ago, I was at Senior Awards, and I sat there and watched as someone who is homophobic, transphobic, racist, and sexist walked up there and collected a community award. After that, I saw many other people who I have personally heard say some of the most vile things walk up there, shake Nelson Fogg's hand, and collect their awards. The worst part was, is as I was watching this, I couldn't even say that they didn't deserve it. They had met all of the required criteria for these awards. And that made me realize something, that the criteria itself for greatness is broken. This broken idea of greatness is also a cycle, because young people grow up and they see who is called great, and they strive to be great like them. And it leads one to think one of two things. Either that bigotry is at the very least allowed in this greatness, or that it is a required aspect of greatness. Not only is this a vile way for greatness to exist, but it also corrupts the idea of who is actually great. If the greatness of one comes at the cost of the exploited, then what does that say about said people? It doesn't paint them as great people who have gone through terrible things. Most of their voices are erased from history. What does George Washington's greatness mean about his slaves? What does FDR's greatness mean about the Japanese Americans and the Mexican people who he caused so much suffering? Are they not also great for what they went through? Am I just a stepping stone to a white man's greatness? Hopefully not. And so I urge all of you to reevaluate the ideas of greatness that we are told all the time. To see those as exploited as the true great ones for all that they suffered and went through. And to see the bigots as what they are, evil. Thank you, that's all I got.
Wow. I feel, sometimes as an old guy, and a person who says, "Get off my lawn," more than I'd like to say. I think we're in good hands. I think our youth are in good hands. Kanisha Jackson is a business owner and entrepreneur. This dedicated CEO with a robust background in law and business management specializes in real estate development and community revitalization. Graduating from Vermont Law School, she is skilled in strategic negotiations and partnerships with a passion for transforming economic distressed areas into thriving communities. Committed to leveraging legal expertise and business acumen to drive sustainable growth and positive social impact. And now, if you happen to be in Hanover, near Dartmouth, and you drive by Boloco's, and you may want some Mexican food, you can stop by her restaurant and partake. Ladies and gentlemen, Kanisha Jackson.
Thank you, Senator. appreciate that warm greeting. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, let's get it started. Woo. All right. First, so this is my son. Let me introduce him. His name is Eze. He's 10 months. I'm here with my beautiful daughter as well, and my mother-in-law, Addison and Angela. They're sitting in the back. Okay, I hear you. First, let me just say how beautiful it is to see many of us gathered here today. To celebrate, to commemorate, and most of all, to connect. Juneteenth is a day of reflection, but it's also a day of joy and culture and community. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, because you could have been anywhere else. My name is Kenesha Jackson, but many of you know me in the community as CJ. So if you ever see me walking in the street or the co-op or anywhere at Beloco, just say hello, CJ. I love to meet people. I'm a business owner, as Senator mentioned, right here in the Upper Valley. I run Beloco in Hanover, and a few other ventures that focus on building up our communities through food, through development, and through love. And today, I want to talk to you about what Juneteenth reminds me of. And it's the promise of equity. You see, freedom was declared on paper in 1863, but many of our ancestors didn't hear about it until years later. Delayed truth, delayed equity. Juneteenth reminds us that while freedom is a powerful word, freedom without equity, that word equity, is incomplete. Thank you. And in 2025, equity still matters. It matters today. It's not just about the past. Yeah. It's about right now. It's about right here. It's about who gets access to opportunities, who gets to build wealth, who gets treated with dignity and respect, not just in the headlines, but in our everyday lives. Equity looks like fair wages. It looks like affordable housing, or attainable housing, as I like to say. It looks like supporting Black-owned BIPOC businesses. It looks like mentoring young people. It looks like calling out injustice and showing up anyway when we see it. And sometimes equity looks like pulling up a chair to someone who's never been invited to the table and then handing them the mic. For me, that's what I try to build every day. Hi. Whether it's in my restaurant, with my employees, or in my work, building homes and empowering entrepreneurs. She can stay. She can stay. She's right here at home. This isn't about charity. It's not about pity. It's about what's right. It's about making sure that the future generations don't have to wait years to hear they're free and worthy and enough. So today, as we eat, we celebrate, we listen to good music, we laugh, we remember, I want us to also recommit. Okay. Recommit to each other, to our elders, to our youth, to our future. Let's not let Juneteenth just be a day off or just a cookout. Let it be a day we live in the legacy of our ancestors who fought so dearly and so hard for us to be here, and the responsibility that they left in our hand. Because freedom means equity, and equity starts with us. Thank you.
Our last student speaker was a recent Hartford grad and has now gone to Storrs, Connecticut to continue his education at the University of Connecticut. He is a photography major. Ladies and gentlemen, Deshaun Sinclair.
I want to start off with a personal story before getting to my essential question. Back in 2024, November 16th, I started writing a poem called Green State Advance. I remember this was my last piece of work I wanted to finish before the winter break, and it was important to me because I'd be exiting my flow state for the first time since going to college. And so I wrote about what feelings came to mind when thinking about home, and if I had to sum it up, then the poem was about identity, racism, and Vermont. I said, I'm pursuing my education so I know the odds. Y'all don't often make it out alive, happy I'm not there. Wish I could follow what Morgan said and stop talking about it. And with y'all brothers' logic, sometimes I'm more white than black, so I guess it's not my problem. The swag can wait much longer, or the match my pessimistic. Pursuing further education is an achievement for anybody, but it's different kind of special for a black family, and for me too, a young mixed man. I said y'all to disconnect myself a little bit from a lot of black realities. I reference gun violence and police brutality. It's special in certain areas of America when a young black man makes it to 20. I said Morgan referring to Morgan Freeman while he was on 60 Minutes. The date was December 18th, 2005. The conversation went a little like this. Black History Month you find ridiculous, said Morgan Freeman. Why? Asked the white interviewer. You're gonna relegate my history to a month? Oh, come on. What? What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? Well, come on, tell me. I'm Jewish, said the white interviewer. Okay, which month is Jewish History Month? He replies, there isn't one. Oh, why not? Do you want one? No, said the interviewer. Right, I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history. The interviewer says, how are we gonna get rid of racism? Stop talking about it. Morgan interjected. I'm gonna stop calling you a white man. I'm gonna ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace, you know me as Morgan Freeman. That YouTube video has stuck with me for years because it makes me wonder. I said I'm mixed with white and black, and I don't entirely fit into either puzzle. Yet all the worst black experiences so perfectly match my skin tone. I said I might come off pessimistic, and I know from experience most people would rather hear a hopeful speech. To line how I feel to another figure y'all know, sometimes I'm more Malcolm than Martin. But that's just because I'm fed up with people waiting. Now let me to the question that made me want to stand and be vulnerable in front of a group I don't know yet again. What is the point of being a student who has learned about black history for a large portion of their education if the student wasn't also taught how to apply the essays, books, and presentations they wrote, read, and listened to for all those years? In other words, are you an American who has learned and understood the black perspective so that you can apply it to your own life, or just simply an American who learned and moved on with your day? I guess that is my goal for the end of the speech, to have inspired you to do more, but I'm so serious when I say that. In front of a group of the Hartford School District last summer, I gave a way longer speech than today about, after being invited to talk to them about a pretty similar essential question. And I ended off that speech in a similar way I want to end this one. I said, there are certain experiences white people can't understand unless a black person tells them, because they don't live in our skin. That's something I've understood for a while, and something that isn't brought up enough, thought about enough, is why you can live like that. White people have put themselves in a position of privilege, a position of power. I assume you've all heard that before. We are not equal, so then why don't you feel more than a little empathy? Why don't you think about it some more after my speech? Why don't you ask that nigga a question when something you said hurts them instead of backpedaling? When white people come to me and ask for clarity about black issues, I'm surprised and happy to tell them, because since I was a little boy in Quincy, Vermont, I've been numb to blatant racism and microaggressions. I had never expected things to get better for me, or even expected people to care to try. I've noticed that when white people start thinking there's hope, they stop thinking. And and I never thought there was hope. I want to leave you with that. That's what I said that day in front of the Hartford School District. And the reason I want to say that again is because I walked into that room expecting to change nothing, and I said that to them. I left that room expecting no one to feel any emotion except anger, even though after my speech they asked some great questions and said thank you. Only after a couple days through an email from Julia Lau, I found out I was wrong. My passion, honesty, and vulnerability brought them to more than one emotion. That room was angry. That room was sad. That room was guilty. That room was inspired. That room was finally listening. That room couldn't help but feel bad, but not for me. They felt bad about themselves. I can't say my speeches will I can't say my speeches will impact anything on a great scale. But undeniably, it did impact my school, and again, that's why I came back today. I personally don't like when people create essays, books, presentations, speeches, and don't give the audience an example of what they should do. Like I said before, what is the point of being a student who has learned about Black history if not taught about how to apply it? The way I would put it is, I think you should, if not already, stop believing in the social construct we call race. And when you see somebody who still believes in it, whether 40 years old or 10, you shut them down right then and there passionately, but don't care if they feel a little bad afterwards. Because they should. Because that is how things change. It doesn't matter whether you're a boy, a girl, a man, a woman. The common person will not repeat behavior if it is not accepted by society, if it is not accepted by their community, if it is not accepted by their school, if it is not accepted by their family. Don't be the white moderate. If you don't know what that means, that is my second assignment for you. Please look that up. I believe that, thank you. I believe that to make progress towards a raceless America, we need to all approach it with passion, honesty, and vulnerability. I've said those words plenty of times throughout my speech in hopes they'd stay with you. Thank you.
Wow. As I said before, we are in good hands with our youth. Senator Keisha Ram Hinsdale is the first woman of color to serve in the state Senate. She is currently the state majority leader and my boss, and she has championed the environment. That's why she's here, for God's sakes. And she has championed the environment in the legislature for over a decade. In the Senate, she serves in the Economic Development and Housing and General Affairs and Education Committees. Keisha also received a 2022 Environmental Merit Award from the Environmental Protection Agency for her work for environmental justice. Keisha has a BS in Natural Resource Planning and a BA in Political Science from the University of Vermont. She received her master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, my boss, Keisha Ram Hinsdale.
Yes,
This is my office. Oh, Mary, you coming or you staying there?
she's staying there.
And that's my boss sitting there with Senator Joe Major. That's Mira. She's 2. She's loving all the kids. But Hartford has such a wonderful Juneteenth celebration. And you just saw it on full display. Because folks can be angry, they can be poignant, they can call folks out, but they're also not yelling. And they're calling folks in. And they're thinking about the next generation and thinking about what we need to do tomorrow. And it's really always been wonderful to come down here and celebrate with all of you. And I have had 2 kids in the process, so we're gonna be coming back and enjoying the bouncy castles and all of that good stuff. And Senator Major told me that I was the keynote. But I think what that should mean is that I just back cleanup and let you all say hello to each other, enjoy the shade. I want to give a shout out to 2 folks who I know probably wanted to be here, but it's just a pretty hot day, and I would have been worried about them, and that's Coach Christie and Dr. Shirley Jefferson. We love them, but we want them to be safe. So we're glad. Otherwise, I have a little baby fan, and I was just gonna blow it on Dr. Shirley for the duration of the event. But that all said, I just want to underscore what you just heard from our other wonderful speakers. Karen Leo Hill, I hope is still here. Always love Karen. We were baby electeds together, as we like to say. We met about 20 years ago. And what you heard from them are 3 things that you can do today and every day to commit to centering Black Vermonters, Black Americans, and to ending anti-Black racism. And that is to unlearn, to unearth, and to uplift. I don't think I have to say too much more about the unlearn part, right? Every Juneteenth, every 4th of July, all of these critical patriotic holidays, we have to remind ourselves that Black folks have always been here. Indigenous folks have always been here. They have made this country great. You can't hear it enough. Juneteenth is the longest holiday that's continually celebrated in American history. It just wasn't celebrated in the mainstream. It wasn't a federal holiday until very recently, but the longest celebrated, continuously celebrated holiday in American history. And Senator Major said something about me being an environmentalist. That's a really important part of my identity. Senator McCormick and I have talked a lot about this, as he was, a great champion of the environment in the legislature. We often start our thinking about the environmental movement. I'm Indian, so I can go all the way back to women who were hugging trees and getting their heads chopped off for it in the 1500s. But there are 2 Americans that I'd like to juxtapose for you. Henry David Thoreau, cool guy. I read Walden, sitting by a pond, watching ants, writing, taking care of Ralph Waldo Emerson's house, considered the founder of the environmental movement in the United States. He was born 3 years apart from Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman traveled the entire eastern seaboard, bringing people to freedom and going back into danger, using only the stars and the rivers and the know-how she had about how to take care of herself and hundreds of people that she freed, because she was a naturalist. Because she knew how to take care of the earth and work with the earth. And she doesn't get that credit, right? Credit for the West goes to John Muir instead of Sacagawea. So we forget the true caretakers of this land and the people who have built the value and the wealth and the greatness of this country. Their stories are often forgotten. And so first, to get curious about that, we have to unlearn. And then we have to unearth. That's what I try to spend my time doing, unearthing those stories that are not told when they need to be. I hope one day there is a plaque, a statue of Senator Joe Major somewhere here in this park. Listen to me. You heard that I am the first and only woman of color to serve in the state Senate. That is crazy. That is not how things should be. I am working really hard to change that, but in the meantime, I wanted to make sure that we celebrated the first Black woman, the first woman of color to have served in the legislature, Luvenia Dorsey Bright. Luvenia Dorsey Bright represented South Burlington starting in 1988, 20 years before I was elected in 2008. And she was all but forgotten. In fact, I called her son, Bill Bright, and left him a message saying, we're good. We have a scholarship in Luvenia's name. She's getting an award soon. How's your mom? She had moved to Illinois. She hadn't spent much time in Vermont since then. And I said, I have another idea. Give me a call back. So Bill Bright calls me and he said, "You have shaken me so bad I thought I'd seen a ghost. My mother passed away the same night that you left that message." Luvenia Dorsey Bright never really lived to see her legacy remembered here in Vermont. It was painful for her in a lot of ways. Her kids, Rebecca and Bill Bright, and I and other legislators, including Senator Major, who made a big donation, we have worked to raise $50,000. We started last Juneteenth, and this Juneteenth we have just closed the request for portraitists, and we've raised $50,000 to put the first portrait of a black woman in the State House. There are 86 paintings, I've counted, in the State House. There are 3 of women. There is 1 of a black man, Alexander Twilight. This will be the first portrait, and only the 4th of a woman, first portrait of a woman of color in the State House. So we need to unearth, and then we need to uplift. You have heard this from all kinds of folks. You know, what is that young man's name? Deshaun Sinclair. Thank you, Deshaun Sinclair. I often like to say that young people, I tell young people, you don't give me hope. That's patronizing. That's me saying, like, you take care of it. You give me courage. You give me courage to be bolder and louder and stronger so that I make some more space for you as you're coming up. Now, it's been wonderful to see all of the young people here, because that's what we need to do, is be brave, use some of our reputational and relational and social capital to make it easier for the next generation. Emily's doing that in the House. Listen, you have some great leaders up in Montpelier, but I'm going to ask you all to find someone you know who does not think of themselves as a politician. You heard young people give speeches here today. Yes, take the mic, you know? So we've heard young people here today who've said, this is my first speech. They've gotten louder, they've found their voice. We need to keep doing that. That is the only way we were going to combat what's happening at the federal level. That's the only way we're going to feel the hope and the courage that we need, is to give those young people a microphone. We are actively looking for more people to run for the legislature, to run for local office like Miranda, to just get out there, be on the Parks Commission, the Police Commission, the Library Commission. We need you all to lead. That's how democracy works. And WCAX asked me yesterday, you know, is it hard to celebrate Juneteenth this year, given who's in the White House and the erasure of so much history from the websites and the Library of Congress and everything this administration is attempting to do. They will only be successful if we do not fight back. They will only be successful if we aren't unearthing those stories and uplifting those voices and making our democracy in our little corner of the world as strong as it can be. I know that's why you all are here. I hope you enjoy this wonderful celebration. So great to see Black-owned businesses and all kinds of folks supporting and helping out. You all are amazing, White River Junction. Thank you so much. Give it up for Joe Major once more, and happy Juneteenth. It's your bell.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my bell. As I said at the beginning, Juneteenth in our history is not a moment, it's a movement. So, keep that movement alive. And the rest of the day, we've got food for you. We're going to have music for you. This is a celebration, so celebrate. Thank you very much.